What's up, peeps? Nick Battle, aka NinosCorner, man. Hey, if you like what you're listening to, go hit that subscribe button if you're looking at this on YouTube. If you're listening to this on a podcast, go give me a 5-star comment, review, or like. Greatly appreciate it. But first off, guys, we're going to talk about this Texas coaching staff. We're going to give final grades out for this staff, for each position coach and the head coach and the coordinators. And we're going to say which player is going to benefit the most from each coach in each position. But first off, guys, I got to preface this with saying that every coach on this staff, every one of them has either played in a national championship game, coached in a national championship game, or won a national championship game, or coached in the college football playoffs, besides two coaches. And those two coaches are Andre Coleman, who's the wide receiver coach, and Jeff Choate, who is the linebacker coach coming in from Montana State. But the caveat that Jeff Choate actually coached in two FCS playoff games and actually made it to the semi-conference finals. So yeah, he's had some experience in the playoffs. And Andre Coleman has definitely had some experience in the playoffs. Might not have been in college, but he was actually a kickoff returner and wide receiver for the San Diego Chargers during a Super Bowl, and still holds a Super Bowl record, if I'm not mistaken, for a kickoff return, longest kickoff return for a touchdown. So he has experience in the Super Bowl. Didn't win it, but he has experience of playing in the biggest of game, on the biggest of stage, in the biggest of stage in football. So let's get into these coaching metrics, guys. So it's going to go down from an A plus down to an F minus, right? A plus means it is the absolute best of best hires that you can get, and an F minus means it's the worst. We've all been in school. We all kind of know how this goes, right? So first off, guys, we're going to talk about the head coach. Head coach, Steve Sarkisian, aka Coach Sark. I got to give this an A. Can't give it an A plus yet, but I will give it an A because he has literally changed the identity of the Alabama Crimson Tide from a defensive juggernaut school to one of the most prolific offenses to ever play in college football for 2 years straight. For 2 years straight, he has not only had the best offense that Alabama has ever seen in 2019, but he had the best offense that Alabama's ever seen in 2020. He bested his numbers, from 19 to 20. One of the best hires that you can get for a head coach. And let me tell you something, guys. This generation of football is all about the offense. And so, especially in the Big 12, you got to fight offense with better offense, but you got to have some defense too. And we're going to get into that later on here. But you got to fight offense with offense. And Steve Sarkisian is one of the best offensive minds here in college football. So I give that an A, stamp of approval. The player that's going to benefit the most from this, Casey Thompson. We saw what he did in that bowl game against Colorado. Man, 4 touchdowns and a half. 4 touchdowns and a half, guys. If he ain't the starter next year, or at least to start off, we got some problems here. I think Casey's going to do a great job as a starting quarterback. I think Sark is licking his chops right now, knowing that he has a quarterback that can ride with him for the next 2 to 3 years. All right, the next coach we're going to talk about, guys, is the offensive line coach, and that is Kyle Flood. And I give this an A+. Why do I give this an A+, guys? This guy not only coached in college, he coached in the pros. And when he went to go be an O-line coach in the pros, guys, he coached with the Falcons, and he was the O-line coach when Sark was there as the OC. So Cal Flood gets an A+ for me because when he goes to the Falcons, he turns that offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus, they were the number 2 ranked offensive line in the league in 2017. In 2018, they were the number 12 line in the league, but they were missing 2 starters, basically. One starter was out for the whole season, and the other starter was at right tackle. I think it was Schrader. He ended up having, just a rough season. Wasn't really mentally there, if I'm not mistaken. Ended up retiring the next year. So, but he was still able to keep that line intact and have that team still be the number 12 ranked offensive line in the league. But like I said, 2017, his first year there, the number 2 ranked offensive line in the league. They went to a playoff, won a playoff game. I gotta give him some credit for that. Also, he was the head coach at Rutgers. We all know about Rutgers in the Big Ten. Rutgers is like, I wouldn't say it's the Kansas of the Big Ten, but it's damn near close to it. But what was he able to do there at Rutgers? He was the offensive line coach for a lot of years, turned to an OC, and then went from OC to a head coach. And let's just look at some of these numbers. When he was the offensive line coach, Cal Flood had 3 offensive line drafted. Okay, during this same time frame at Texas, we only had 4 during that same time frame. This is Rutgers, guys. This is like the Kansas of the Big Ten. All right, he becomes the OC in 2009, 10, and 11, and he had 4 more players drafted from the offensive side of the ball as an OC. Okay, so he becomes the head coach from 12 to 15, 12, 13, 14, and 15. That's 4 years. During that 4-year time span, he had 11 players drafted from Rutgers to go to the league. During this, let's just keep this in perspective, guys. When Charlie Strong was here for 3 years, he only had 7 players drafted to go to the league at Texas with the amount of talent that we have here. When Tom Herman was here for 4 years, comparable to, Kyle Flood's 4 years of head coaching experience at Rutgers, he only had 10 players get drafted. So let's just think about that for a minute, guys. 10 players drafted at Texas were all the resources here when Tom Herman was here. Cal Flood was at Rutgers. He had 11 players drafted. All right, so hey, the man can develop players. That's exactly what that tells me. He's a great developer of talent, and he's a great ID person for talent. He's identified some great players there. So in saying that, guys, he's a great developer of talent. He knows how to win, and he can coach him up. I give him an A+. The player who I think is going to benefit the most from him is the starting center next year, Jake Majors. Great lateral quickness, strong base, 4-star recruit coming out. Started 2 games last year at center once Derek Kerstetter got hurt. So once Derek Kerstetter got hurt, he ended up, leaving the game. Jake Majors came in and started at center, and then I think we bumped out somebody else to right tackle. But Jake Majors is going to be the center for this team next year, and I think he is going to benefit the most from Cal Flood being the offensive line coach. The next position coach that we're going to talk about, guys, is the running back coach, Stan Drayton. Now, we all know about Stan Drayton and his great work. I give this an A higher also. The work that he's done with Brian Westbrook at Villanova, nothing short of amazing. The work that he's done with Carlos Hyde at Ohio State, 1,500-yard rusher there. The work that he has done with Zeke Elliott, 1,800-yard rushing at Ohio State. The work that he has done here at Texas with Bijan Robinson. The great work that he's done with getting Rojo switched over from quarterback to running back. He has been a guy who has brought some talent here. Not only that, he actually coached in the NFL for some time too. Coach Matt Forte when he was, like one of the best running backs in the league. He coached Jordan Howard to, I think he was the Rookie of the Year that year. So you got to look, he has coached not only at the college level and been very successful, but he's also coached at the NFL level and been highly successful as well. And he hasn't been a bad recruiter here. People think that he wasn't the best recruiter here, but he's been pretty good. He got Keontae Ingram, the number 1 running back in the state of Texas when he came out. He got Bijan Robinson, the number 1 running back in the country. And if we end up hopefully getting L.J. Johnson, he's also, if I'm not mistaken, the number 1 or number 2 running back in the state of Texas. And so it's either him or Whedon. So man, he has brought some talent here, and I think it's going to bring some even more talent here, especially with this high potent offense that is going to come in from Steve Sarkisian. The player that's going to benefit most from this is an easy answer, Bijan Robinson. I can't wait to see his development here in the next year. Next coach guy is Andre Coleman. Andre Coleman is the wide receiver coach. I got to give him a C+, guys, just for the simple fact that, he's not the guy that you think of when it comes to recruiting at a big-time school. But I think things are going to change here with Steve Sarkisian in this offense. He coached at Kansas State. He played in the league for some time, too. Like I said, he played in the Super Bowl with the Chargers. He has 2 players, if I'm not mistaken, right now that are in the NFL. One is Isaiah Zuber and Byron Pringle, who plays for the Kansas City Chiefs right now. But both of those guys were undrafted free agents. So what does that tell me? Undrafted free agents usually are guys that the talent is not really developed at the college level. And when it's not developed at the college level, those guys become undrafted free agents. So there's kind of a knock on that position coach right there. But he was at Kansas State. Kansas State had a completely different offense where they kind of run first. They got quarterbacks that are basically crash test dummies there. They let them pretty much get banged up all year, and they don't pass the rock around a lot. So I don't think his skills as a coach at that position were truly unlocked. If I'm not mistaken, Steve Sarkisian actually wanted to bring him into Alabama, or he was on that short list of finalists to be the wide receiver coach at Alabama. But the final decision was made by Saban, if I'm not mistaken, and Higgins was brought in to be Wiggins was brought in to be the coach when it comes down to wide receivers at Alabama, and the rest is history. The player that's going to benefit the most from his coaching, I think it's going to be Jordan Whittington. I think he is the player that's going to be poised to break out the most. I think Coleman did a great job last year with Brennan Eagles. I think he did a great job with Josh Moore, who had his breakout season. I expect Josh Moore to get a lot more of the rock this year because Brennan Eagles is going to the league. I also expect somebody has to step up in that number 2 position. And I think Jordan Whittington is going to be one of those guys that's going to emerge in his offense. He's just so talented. So I can't wait to see him on the field too. Next coach, guys, is Jeff Banks. And I give him an A+. And not just an A+ because of his on-field coaching, but his recruiting. Jeff Banks is an A+ recruiter. He recruits the best of them, and he recruits with the best of them. I love this hire. He was a guy that Alabama did not want to get rid of. Saban really wanted to keep him, but Texas ended up winning out on this and getting him. A+ recruiter, great special teams coach, one of the best special team coaches in the country. I can't say that he's the best because later on in this list, we got somebody who won the award for best special teams coach. However, he's a tight end / special teams coordinator here at Texas, and I think Jeff Banks is going to do some great things. Just look at the tight ends in the offense. You had to go back a little bit. Irv Smith, who I think plays now with the Vikings, but he's one of Jeff Banks' players who actually got drafted, and he's had a really good career at Alabama and a pretty good career in the NFL. But the player I think that's going to benefit the most out of this is going to be Jared Wiley. I love Jared Wiley. 6'7", 245, 250-pound tight end, can move really well, can catch the ball, very athletic. In high school, I think it was a quarterback at Temple High School. Also played basketball, very athletic kid. By my stats, by my own custom NinosCorner number, he was the most productive tight end that had at least 10 targets thrown to him. He was the most productive tight end that we had on this team, and I hope that he starts next year because I think he is the most complete tight end that we have on this team. All right, guys, we're going to go and switch it one more position. A.J. Milwee, who is going to be the quarterback's coach. I got to give him a C+ because I just don't know much about him. He was an analyst at Alabama. We don't know too much about him. The only thing that we do know is that he is Sark's right-hand man. So, hey, we all know who's going to be running the quarterback room. It might be Milwee, it might be, but that's Sark's job is to be the OC, basically, to run the offense and call the plays. And so, we'll just hold off judgment on A.J. Milwee until we see him in action. But I got him as a C+. He's Sark's right-hand man. We'll see what happens. He did have a job as the OC at Arkansas State, but Texas was able to pull him over to be the actual QB coach when Sark got hired. Now, let's go to the defensive side of the ball, all right? So we got Pete Kwiatkowski, the defensive coordinator, the best defensive coordinator in the Pac-12, for some years now. What do I love about this guy? He's going to be the defensive coordinator and the outside linebacker coach. What I love about him is that he has a multiple defense. He's going to do some great things. I give him an A hire because he is the best defensive coordinator in the Pac-12. I give him that A hire because guess what, guys? He's had 17 players drafted to go to the league when he was the DC at Washington. All right, he was in that job for a while. So 17 players drafted, 10 of those players were drafted either in the first or the second round. This dude puts out some talent to the league. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, guys. Also, when he was at Boise State, he was the DC there underneath Chris Peterson. He had 7 players drafted in the draft. 3 of those were in the top 2 rounds. So what is he going to coach here? He's going to be the defensive coach and he's going to be outside linebacker coach. But what I love about him is that the position that's going to benefit the most from him is going to be that outside linebacker / DN hybrid. almost like a Joseph Asai kind of player, right? Too bad he's going to the league. But I think we got a guy who can probably step in, and I won't say be as good as Joseph Asai, but we got some people that are marinating right now in this program who I think are going to get some really good playing time this year. And that guy that I think is going to be the person to take over for Osai is going to be Prince Dorba. Remember that name, folks, Prince Dorba. When he came out in 2020, he was the best pure pass rusher in the state of Texas. He was 6'4", 220 pounds coming out of high school. I think it's going to be really good for this program this year. Mark my word, I think Prince Dorba is going to be that guy. He's going to benefit the most. But getting back to just that hybrid defensive end, outside linebacker position. Two players kind of stick out for me. You had Shaq Thompson during that time, who ended up getting drafted in the first round. He also plays some running back, so this kind of tells you the kind of athlete he is and the kind of guys that he likes to put at that position. He also had Haioli Kikaha. I got the name right this time, guys. All right, he had 35.5 sacks and 51 tackles for loss during his 4-year career at Washington when he was there. Outside linebacker type, right? But in his last 2 years, he had 31.5 tackles. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 31.5 sacks, 40 tackles for loss. I think 19 of those sacks came in his senior year. He got drafted second round by the Saints. That is the kind of production that he is going to want from that outside linebacker position. It's going to be some big shoes to fill. Osai would have definitely filled them this year, but he's going to the league, guys. I think that guy's going to be Prince Dorba. Mark my words on that one, guys. Prince Dorba. Next person, guys, the defensive line coach, Bo Davis. I give it an A higher also. You got a guy who not only coached at Texas before, but he had 2 stints at Alabama. He's won a national championship at the college level. Okay, he goes to the NFL, coaches for the Lions for 3 or 4 years. Hey, you got to be pretty good to coach in the NFL. He has done that. He's coached some of the best. He has had 8 defensive linemen drafted when he actually worked in college. A bunch of these guys are first and second rounders. The Ashawn Robinsons, the Jaron Reeds, man. He has put some players in the league, and he's also recruited really well. So he has recruited guys. Let's just look at this for a minute, guys. He recruited Deshaun Hand, who came, I think, out of Woodbridge High School in Woodbridge, Virginia, right outside of D.C., and Darren Payne. You know, those are in 2 back-to-back years, right, when he was at Bama. And both of those guys were drafted. I think Payne was the first rounder, and so was Hand. Hand was definitely a first rounder to the Jets, 4th pick of the draft a couple years ago. But what really gets me is the Marcus Davenport development that when he was at UTSA, University of Texas San Antonio, he got a defensive end to be drafted in the first round. That guy was Marcus Davenport. And when you can get somebody from UTSA to be drafted in the first round, you're doing something. You're cooking with hot grease, baby. And that's what he did. So, hey, I give Bo Davis an A grade. When he was at Texas, he even had a couple guys get drafted at Texas in that 2-year time frame. So, like I said, 8 players drafted, guys, 5 of them in the first or second round, and he even had a player from UTSA get drafted. So that I'll tell you about Bo Davis. I give him an A. The players that are going to benefit the most from him, I'm going to say Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton. I think those kids are very young. Both of them will be true sophomores this year, and they are going to be some monsters. Alfred Collins is one of the most athletic big men I think that we've seen in a long time here on the 40. I can't wait to see this guy play some more. And Vernon Broughton has all the physical tools also. I think these kids are going to be studs here, but especially Alfred Collins this year. I can't wait to see both of these players develop. And I think he's going to develop, like Coburn also. Coburn's like that short plug in the middle that you can't move. I love it. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Casey Hampton, just a little bit, man. So, all right, next position coach, guys, is Jeff Choate. We kind of already talked about him, head coach at Montana State. Has some ties with Coach PK. He was his defensive line coach down in Washington when he's at Boise State. I think he was the linebacker coach and also a running back coach too for about 3 years. So he kind of knows both sides of the ball. I give him a B higher. He has playoff experience in the FCS level. But yeah, while he was at Washington, 2 draft picks, right? And so you had Danny Shelton and the other guy, Kikaha. Kikaha. I can't never get the name right, guys, but he had 2 draft picks, when he was at Washington. But the player I think that's going to benefit the most here is going to be Jalen Ford. I think Jalen Ford, when he came in that bowl game and showed what he can do when Mitchell had to go out because of the targeting call against Kansas State, we got to see this young talent and how he runs sideline to sideline. I think it's a perfect player for this system. He did very well. I was very shocked at how he was able to adapt to that game, especially as a true freshman. And I think underneath Choate's tutelage, I think Jalen Ford is going to do some really good things. I'm not even going to count Overshawn because Overshawn is already a man child. He's going to do great no matter what coach is there. But I think the player that's going to benefit the most from this, I think it's going to be Jalen Ford. The next coach, guys, is Terry Joseph. Terry Joseph, I'm giving him a B. I'm giving him a B, guys, because Terry Joseph, kind of have to see a little bit more from Terry Joseph, but he is a good coach. Don't get me wrong. He has, let's see, draft picks. He had 3. He had 2 when he was at Texas A&M. He had 1 when he was at North Carolina. He had 3 when he was at Notre Dame. And another 3. So we're looking at 3, 6, 7, 8. He had pretty much 9 draft picks, guys. 9 draft picks. Oh yeah, those other 3 were from Texas A&M. So he had 9 draft picks when he's been a defensive, backfield coach at 4 different stops. 9 draft picks. I think it's going to be a good recruiter here in the Southwest, especially in Louisiana, because he's from New Orleans. So he has those connections, which is good to have that region locked up. And also, that's close to Houston, too. It's only 3 or 4 hours from Houston. So you get the opportunity where he's going to recruit really well here in the Southeast. I like the hire. Steve Sarkisian actually coached against him a couple times to say it's been a thorn in his side. And if you go look at that game against Notre Dame in this playoff series when Alabama won, they didn't run over Notre Dame. Their passing defense was really good against Bama. So I think the player that's going to benefit the most out of him is going to be Keaton Crawford. Keaton Crawford, East Beast, man, come out of high school. I love him. He's gritty. He's grimy. He's one of those players that's going to get in your face. I love him to death. He was 5'10", 5'11", maybe 185 pounds or so. But we'll see where he plays. Can he move into that slot position? Because I think that we have the outside cornerbacks are manned. They think Thompson's going to start at one side, and we all know that, the Shark's going to be on the other side, Jamison. So who's going to man that nickel position? Is it going to be Keaton Crawford? Is it going to be Chris Adamara? Not sure yet. I think Keaton Crawford is built a little bit more for the slot, just a little bit sturdier body. So I think he's going to benefit a lot from Terry Joseph. The next coach, guys, the last coach that we're going to talk about here is Blake Gideon. We all know about Blake Gideon. Started 52 games here in the 40 acres, 10 interceptions, pretty much started for 4 years straight, played in a national championship game, goes into coaching after college, won special teams coach of the year for the NCAA. So it's a great special teams coach. I am giving Blake Gideon, though, a C+, maybe a B- grade here. No, I'm going to give him a C+ grade here. C+ grade based on the position he's going to coach, which is defensive backs, safeties probably. And I'm going to give him this grade just for the simple fact that he hasn't coached much here in that position. He knows the position. He's played it. He's played it at an extremely high level. Started 4 years here at Texas. However, he hasn't coached it, I don't think ever. He's been that special teams guy. So I'm going to give him a C+ here. However, I think he's going to turn out to be pretty good. His dad's a coach, so he's going to have the chops when it comes to the recruiting, so he can go into those high schools. The folks are going to know him. I think it's going to be a good hire, and I think it's going to pay dividends in the long run. We just got to see more from it and see how Blake Gideon is going to do. I think the player that's going to benefit the most from him is probably going to be Tyler Owens. I want to see what Tyler Owens can do. I really do. I think Tyler Owens is one of those freak of nature athletes, and we're going to see who's going to start at the safeties this year. I think B.J. Foster's going to start, maybe Darren Thompson. It's going to be interesting. But Tyler Owens can be the X factor because he's a big, strong, fast guy. And if he gets underneath the right tutelage and is able to get into the right places at the right times, he can do some damage here at the college level. And I think that Blake Gideon might be the guy who can get that out of him. And if he can, we're going to have a monster on our hands here for the next 3 to 4 years here on the 40 acres. But that is the grading that I have down. If I had to give this staff an overall grade, I got to give this staff an A- to an A. I think it's a well put together staff. I love what Steve Sarkisian did. That's why I gave the really high grades on some of these folks. I love what he did as far as his offensive side of the ball, getting some continuity with Jeff Banks, getting some continuity with Flood. I think it's amazing. I think it's an A+ hire. Got the best offensive line coach in the SEC. Got one of the best special team coordinators, or actually two of the best special team coordinators in the country with Jeff Banks and Blake Gideon, which is something that we needed help with last year with special teams. Got the tight end coach in Jeff Banks, also really good. I think we got the best defensive coordinator in the Pac-12 and one of the top five best defensive coordinators in the country, and Coach PK, the linebacker coach. I love that we got some continuity there also. I love the Terry Joseph hire. I think Blake Gideon's going to be a really good hire too. I think Bo Davis is an A hire, A+ hire in that defensive line, just from his vast experience, not only in the college level but also in the NFL. I love the staff, guys. Tell me what you think, man. Leave me some comments underneath and give me a nice like and a subscribe, guys. Man, Nino's Corner, I'm out. Like I always tell you guys, do you. Don't be afraid to fail. Outgrow your environment. Understand your brilliance, man. I'm out. Salute to you.